My name is Kimberly. I'm standing in the private dining hall of Pinewood Retreat, a luxury resort hidden in the Colorado Rockies. My mother-in-law, Margaret, waves me over to ask for more dressing, again, as if I'm the staff. It's infuriating, especially considering I've been part of this family for over a decade, contributed to the meal, and set half of the table. But they don't know that I'm not just a guest this year. I own this place. I'm the one behind the reservation policy changes they've been complaining about all morning. I'm the reason they didn't get their usual suite upgrades, and the legacy guest discount for the Thompson family and their extended relatives is gone. They'll find out tonight. Looking back, it all started when I married Ryan Thompson. From the very beginning, I knew my place in the Thompson family. It wasn't because anyone said it directly, but the signs were everywhere. When they asked about my job, they'd nod politely and change the subject before I could finish. They assumed I'd clean up after dinner while Ryan's brothers talked business and the women discussed their beach house renovations. Margaret once introduced me to her golf friends as Ryan's wife. She does something with buildings, I think. And then laughed as if it was a joke. In reality, I'm a lead consultant for large-scale infrastructure projects, focusing on urban development, transportation systems, and environmental conservation. But to them, it was just some vague construction-related thing. At family retreats, held every summer at this resort, Margaret planned everything down to the last detail. She always booked the mountain view cabins first, got early check-in without asking, and made sure everyone knew she was on good terms with the former owner. I'd walk into the dining room with a plate of appetizers, and someone would say, "Thanks, dear. Can you get the utensils, too?" I was always the quiet, practical wife, the one who wore comfortable shoes and brought useful gifts. I tried so hard in the beginning. I hosted Christmas dinners, bought personalized gifts for every family member, and remembered all the birthdays. But nothing changed. I was still the one who showed up early, left late, and was never mentioned in the family newsletters. Ryan never stood up for me. It wasn't that he was mean, he just didn't notice. When I told him about Margaret's snide remarks or his cousin's rude comments, he'd say, "They mean well." It became his default response, and eventually, it made me silent. Last summer, something snapped. Ryan's uncle made a joke about my old car, and everyone laughed, including Ryan. That night, I sat on the cabin balcony, looking at the stars. I stopped asking myself what I did wrong and started asking what I was waiting for. The next morning, I called an old colleague, Lisa, who is now a real estate acquisitions analyst managing a private hospitality fund. I told her I wanted to buy a resort. She was surprised but not shocked. "Of course you do. You always aim high," she said. Within a week, we started looking at listings. I didn't tell Ryan because there was nothing official yet. 4 months later, we found Pinewood Retreat. It was a gem caught between rising property taxes and disinterested owners. Lisa said, "You're not just buying a resort. You're buying their memories and taking control of their special place." I liquidated a large part of my investment portfolio, used my consulting fees and dividends, and sold my stake in a tech startup. We formed a holding company, Evergreen Resorts Holdings, to keep my identity hidden. Lisa handled the negotiations. The deal took 6 weeks to close. The first time I walked around the resort as the majority owner, I did it alone in the early morning. I stood in the dining hall where Margaret had once scolded me for misplacing the salt shaker and ran my hand along the railing she leaned on every night. I felt calm, knowing that ownership was a quiet, final thing. We made some changes. We upgraded the heating and cooling systems, raised staff salaries, and tightened the back-end operations. We removed the Thompsons from the legacy guest list, saying it was a policy change. They just assumed some faceless corporation had bought the place. They complained in the family group chat, saying it had lost its charm. This year, when the family retreat came around, Margaret took credit for booking the same cabins. What she didn't know was that those cabins had been reassigned twice. I reinstated them at full price, no discount. The champagne was a courtesy I almost cut, but decided to keep. We arrived on a Thursday. The same greetings, the same clinking glasses, and the same air of superiority. No one noticed I wasn't checking in at the front desk. I walked past it with the manager, looking at staff schedules on my tablet. To them, I probably looked like I was just hovering around. At the welcome brunch the next day, the complaints started. Ryan's sister, Emily, said the check-in staff was cold. His cousin, Hannah, said the valet took forever. Margaret added that the pancakes weren't as good as last year. They were too busy complaining to notice me sitting at the end of the table, sipping my coffee and looking at my resort-issued tablet. That night, at the welcome dinner, Margaret had chosen a mountain, chic theme. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to my business presentation years ago. It fit better now. I sat next to Ryan, who didn't ask where I'd been or what I'd been doing. Halfway through the meal, Ryan's cousin, Jake, who once laughed at my homemade gifts, made a comment about the new fitness center. Who renovates in the middle of the season?
Amateurs, he said.
The conversation turned into a storm of complaints. Then Margaret raised her glass and said, I hope whoever bought this place understands that families like ours built its reputation. After dessert, I excused myself, telling Ryan I needed some air. He just nodded, not even looking up. I stepped out onto the terrace, took out my phone, and called our general manager, Jake. It's time, I said. Inside, I watched through the glass doors as Jake stepped to the front of the dining room. He tapped his glass and said, Good evening. This year, Pinewood Retreat has a new majority owner. Please welcome Miss Kimberly Thompson. The room went dead silent. Emily froze with her glass in hand. Jake stared at me like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Hannah mouthed something, but no sound came out. Margaret's glass was still in the air, as if time had stopped. Ryan looked like he'd been hit by a truck. I walked slowly to the head of the table. Jake handed me the mic. I looked around the room and said, Thank you all for your support over the years. This resort has always been a place of tradition, but now it's a place of change. You're all welcome here, just like everyone else. There will be no more special treatment. Our policies will apply to everyone equally. I handed the mic back and walked out. There was no applause, no protests, just silence. I made it to the hallway and exhaled. It wasn't relief or victory, it was release. The next morning, I didn't go to brunch. I had work to do. I walked around the resort with Jake, checking staff logs and maintenance requests. By noon, the messages started coming in. Ryan's cousin, Tom, texted asking to talk about the cabin. Hannah sent a message saying she was impressed with my hospitality skills. Margaret called twice, but I let it go to voicemail. Ryan showed up at my door. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside. He just stood there, hands in his pockets. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. I replied, Why didn't you ever ask? That night, I attended the cocktail party for legacy guests. The air was thick with discomfort. I walked to the front and said, Some of you know me, some of you thought you did. Behind me, a screen showed plans for a new mountain-side spa, expanded cabins, and a community center. At the top was the Grace Women's Fund, named after my mother, who worked as a cleaner for 20 years and taught me that respect is earned, not given. After the event, Emily cornered me, saying there was a misunderstanding about the cabin lease. I told her the lease had expired 2 years ago. She tried to make an excuse, but I showed her the evidence of her illegal subletting. I gave her my legal team's contact and told her she might need an accountant. Ryan's uncle, who once made fun of my simple clothes, emailed asking to extend his lease. I sent him a 30-day notice to vacate and said the cabin would be given to a charity for homeless veterans. Margaret showed up unannounced, trying to talk to me about appearances and how this would affect Ryan. I listened, then showed her evidence of her mistreatment of former employees. I told her if she tried to play the victim, it would go public. She left looking defeated. 3 days later, I sat alone on the dock at sunrise, sipping my coffee. I wasn't angry anymore. I had spent years shrinking myself to fit into a family that never saw me. Now I was fully in view, and they didn't know what to do. Ryan moved out a month later, leaving a note that said, I didn't see you and I should have. I kept the note, not for sentiment, but for the clarity it brought. Because sometimes closure comes with power, quiet and irrevocable power. And now, I own the place they once thought was theirs.